We start by acknowledging that those at our Trothira campus in Fairbanks are on the unceded customary lands of the Dana people of the Tanana River. Here in Nome, we acknowledge the Indigenous peoples upon whose customary lands our campus resides. Northwest Campus is located on the customary lands of the Inupiaq, Siberian Yupik, and Central Yupik peoples. We honor the continued fights for the rights of First Peoples and stand together in solidarity and action. At UAF, we are growing into a socially just and caring institution of higher education. This ongoing speaker series titled Shine a Light, Promoting Conversations on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is designed to encourage understanding, build empathy, and engage everyone in thinking critically about our worldviews. The series is led by UAF Northwest Campus, but like all great diversity efforts, there are many partnerships and collaborations. We thank the UAF Department of Equity and Compliance for teaming up with Northwest Campus to bring this series to reality. You can find the recordings of past presentations on the Northwest Campus website under Community Events. The link will be added to chat. This semester, our Shine a Light events are during the noon hour of each third Tuesday of the month. Again, thank you for being here for today's event, and we hope you continue to join us. I would now like to introduce and thank our speaker, Vi Waghiyi. Vi has worked with Alaska Community Action and Toxins, ACAT, founded by Pam Miller, to continue the work of Annie Aloha of Savoonga for over 20 years, and Vi uses her voice to advocate for her family and the people of Sivuqaq, addressing the disproportionate harm and injustice that has affected her communities. She has challenged herself to learn as much as she can. It is personal for her, and the harm has directly affected her family and communities. Vi does this work to ensure that the existence of Yupik people, culture, traditions, and ways of life will continue. In 2021, Vi was one of the 26 members chosen by President Biden and Vice President Harris for the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council. The council provides advice and recommendations on how to address current and historic environmental injustices enacted across the United States. Please use the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions that Vi may address at the end of her presentation. You're more than welcome to use the chat feature, but please be sure to put your question in Q&A so we don't miss it or them. At this time, I present Vi Waghiyi.
Thank you, Barb. My name is Bangunhak Vi Waghiyi. I'm the daughter of the late John and Della Waghiyi. I was born in Sivuqaq, or Savoonga, on Sivuqaq, which is our traditional name for silent. And it's an honor to be asked to speak on your Shine a Light program. And I'd like to thank the Northwest Campus, UAF, Barb, and staff for this opportunity. It's always an honor to speak about our island project in our region. And I did grow up in Nome and on the islands, so I'm very passionate to be a voice for those, including our Sivuqaq Yupik people. I am a Sivuqaq Yupik grandmother. I'm a mother of 4 sons. I am raising a 3-year-old, and I have a total of 5 grandchildren. I am calling in from Anchorage on the unceded territories of the Dena'ina people. However, the work I do is with Sivuqaq, our native villages, Gamble, and native villages, Savoonga tribal governments. We have partnered with them since 2000, and we like to acknowledge Annie And we are continuing her work. And with that, I'm gonna pull up my PowerPoint. And I have Adam here helping me. There you go. Please be patient. Wonderful.
I'm gonna put it screen here.
Okay. This is fine.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can they see the full screen? Okay. As I mentioned, I work with ACAT. We're a small nonprofit woman-led organization here in Anchorage. All of our board members are women, a majority are Alaska Native women. And I got hired in October 2002. ACAT had did a press release about the PCB levels in the blood of our people. I read the newspaper article on the front page, Anchorage Daily News. And the article really touched me. I knew about the 2 former bases on our island. And I knew about all the high rates of cancer. My dad had died of cancer in 1993. But I had never put the 2 together. And at the time, June Martin was the project coordinator, and before her was Sterling Galargan, both incredible women who began this project with our leadership and communities on St. Lawrence Island, or Sivuqaq. And later the same week, I got a job offer on my answering machine to be the assistant coordinator. And I was a stay-at-home mom for 6 years. And once when my children were all in school, I started taking computer classes thinking I'd get my degree in accounting. Most of my job experience had been in accounting, but the Creator had other plans for me. And I took the job because it was so personal. My presentation is titled Community-Based Participatory Research Project on Sivuqaq to address military toxics and identify persistent organic pollutants. And as I mentioned, I like to thank UAF campus for this opportunity. And I believe how do I advance? Oh, there. Most of you know where Sivuqaq is. We're located in the northern Bering Sea. Our creation story is that the Creator put his hand into the Bering Sea and pulled up some soil from the bottom of the Bering Sea, picked it up and wrung it out. And it does look like our island has been wrung out. That's what Sivuqaq means. And we're closer to Siberia than mainland Alaska. And at one time, there were 10,000 of us and 32 villages. Some of our elders think that we even had 20,000 of us. And pre-Western contact, our people were very fierce warriors, living off the land and ocean like we had for many, many centuries and millennia, taking only what we need with the utmost respect for our lands and waters. And since we are from the Bering Sea, we continue to live off the ocean and our lands and waters. And due to Western contact, epidemics, starvations, from 32 villages, we have 2 left here now, today. As you can see in the top, there is Gamble, which is closest to Siberia, where we can see Russia from our window. And in the middle is Savoonga, where I was born and raised. Initially, it was a reindeer camp. And on the bottom right is Northeast Cape. And we are still here. And So we, in our region, due to our isolation, we are behind Little Diomede as far as eating the most nakapik or traditional foods. And these are images of our ancestors. It's so important that we recognize our ancestors, because we are, they overcame so much, including generational historical trauma, overcame so many horrific epidemics and starvations, and yet we are still here. The image on the bottom is of our elder women who were the backbone of our communities. And the image in the front row, second from the left, is my mother's, Ningyok, her grandmother. ACAT, she was raised by her grandmother, very traditional. She was the eldest of 10 children. Her parents were Kingigak and Ahaya, May and Theodore Kingigak. And the image on the left is of my grandparents, Ayuklik. She is an original Gamble resident. 99.9% of our people today have ties to Siberia. A handful of our clans are the original island residents, and she was one of them. And her roots are from Gamble. And next to her is my Vi Waghiyi. And he was the orphan. He survived starvation at Bunguk Island. The whole area on the northwest, northeast side of our island is my people's clan. My Apaw is from Gialirak and Bunguk, and my grandmother is Uwali clan. And behind them stands my father holding my little brother John Jr., who a lot of you may know, and my mother Della holding my sister Lorraine or Lori. And we have my eldest sister Marion, my eldest brother Ernie, who passed away when he was 19, and my brother Fritz. And then we see the awesome picture of our youth that are drumming and singing between the two whale arches. It's so powerful to watch our youth sing and dance to our songs and stories that have been passed on for generations. And our traditional knowledge is a way of life that our Creator has intended for us to live in harmony with our lands, waters, and environment. It is the foundation of our cultures and beliefs. Foremost is the highest respect for our Adan, our Creator, living as the Creator intended, as keepers of our Mother Earth, as stewards, caretakers, conservationists, and scientists. And these are words from Delbert Pangayi, who is a former president from native village of Savoonga. And his quote ends with, "We have our own laws which protect our communities." Another quote is from Merle Abasangak from native village of Gamble. "We have always been a vigilant people. Our community-based research enables us to be vigilant at the molecular level, since we have been doing our own community-based research since 2000. And I will give background of our way of life, which has been our foundation. Our main foods come from the Bering Sea, which are bowhead whale, walrus, and seals, 4 species of seals. A way of life we've lived for time immemorial. And I would just like to acknowledge the joyous occasion a couple of days ago. Preston Rocco and his crew landed their first wild bowhead whale recently. So our communities, as we speak, are very, very busy harvesting the first spring bowhead whale. And we believe that our marine mammals and wildlife that have sustained our people for decades give themselves up to us so we can continue as Sivuqaq Yupik people. Historically, we used skin boats, and you can see an image of, I believe that's Chrysaloa splitting a female walrus skin. And it's ideal to use female skin because the male skin is really tough on its chest from all the fighting and in within their ranks to get a mate. And then the image on the bottom left is also of another woman preparing a skin. And in the back, you can see a rack with meat drying and a harvest of a bowhead whale. And the image on the bottom is my Anana, Harriet Pinaya, preparing our nakapika for dinner. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get, Okay, here are some more images of our way of life. Our young men scale cliffs to gather and harvest mer eggs. And we are seeing so many changes which our elders predicted decades ago of the changes, the climate crisis we are facing today. Those cliffs you see now, there's a young man scaling. He's looking down and holding a rope for the guy on the bottom that has scaled the cliffs on the side of the cliff to gather the mer eggs. 2-3 years ago, those of you that may have gone to Savoonga, not far from our community, we can see our cliffs. My brother brings his young children every spring and summer to hunt cliff birds. He had to make a very difficult choice. His son and daughter love to eat the cliff birds, the auklets. And Delbert, who I quoted earlier, about the same time had gone to the cliffs. Generally, we have so many cliff birds. Its thunder is so loud, and the sky turns black from all the cliff birds. That spring and summer, there were no birds. He said, Vi, it was so eerie. These are critical changes, burdens we didn't create that is threatening our way of life. However, we are still here. The image on the bottom is Merle's wife, Bunny, sewing a skin boat underneath, on top of the wooden frame. And these are images of our men singing and dancing several years back at AFN. I like to recognize Annie. She started this project many, many years ago. Our people welcomed the military. They came in the late 1940s to gamble. During the Cold War, our people welcomed them. They helped rescue downed planes. Just recently, a week or two ago, the military finally acknowledged Alaska Territorial Guard, our parents, our men our fathers, our grandfathers who volunteered during the Cold War. Very important strategic location. We were the eyes and ears of the North during the Cold War. And the Air Force built a base first in Gamble and on the other end of Northeast Cape. And Annie lived at Northeast Cape. She was a very respected elder. And she started noticing not only high rates of cancer, low birth weight, babies, miscarriages, and stillbirths in her people, majority of them from Northeast Cape. Northeast Cape was a community. Now those families have been displaced and have moved to Savoonga. We had approximately about 130 people that lived there, and we had a school there, Native Village in Northeast Cape, even a tribal government. As I mentioned, she still inspires our work today. She died of breast cancer. Our executive director met Annie here in Anchorage in 1997 at a women's conference. Annie tried to get help for our people for 20 years, and nobody would listen to her or validate her concerns. She got sent to agency to agency to agency, and within those 20 years came around full circle. It was the first time ever anybody had validated her concerns and listened to her. And Pam, our executive director, saw a need and established Alaska Community Action on Toxics and sought funding to address not only Annie's concerns about the high rates of cancers and other respiratory and heart disease, reproductive justice, health harms she started noticing in her people. And this image is of Annie before the site was ever remediated. She was one of Norton Sound Health Corporation's community health aimed, very well respected, and it's an honor to continue her work today. This image is of Alaska. We have mapped GIS mapping. Alaska has 700 current and former use military bases. The former ones are formerly used defense sites. As you can see, a lot of them are up north at the top of Alaska, all along the west coast and down to the Aleutians. And where you see majority, where there quite a bit of red indicators, those are Superfund sites. But majority of these current and formerly used defense sites are in close proximity to our homes or our hunting and food gathering locations. And the oval is where you see our region, the Norton Sound region. In 2005, we got a grant to continue our work on the island, but expand to 15 communities in Norton Sound, where we identified 32 formerly used defense sites. And we worked with Native Village of Gamble, Native Villages, Savoonga, leadership from Wales, leadership from Brevik and Mary's Igloo and Teller, Native Village Council, Nomaskimo community, also with Elam, Elam Stebbins, and also we did environmental sampling in and around Nome. Because these sites, as I mentioned, were either abandoned, like they did at Northeast Cape. It was a pretty big installation, several hundred personnel, and also at Gamble, they buried everything. When they came from elder interviews, I have hours and hours of footage from our elders who witnessed the military's occupation and their activities. One estimation of all those barrels that you saw in the previous picture with Annie, I'm sorry, when they abandoned Northeast Cape, they left everything. It was like a ghost town. We were important strategic location. We were the eyes and ears of the North during the Cold War. And at Gamble, they dug big pits and buried everything. And Winnie James, an elder, who was very instrumental in providing us history as he witnessed and their military's occupation and their activities. He said they punctured holes in over 300,000 barrels right there on top of Gamble. Today, the school, the playground, the homes, city building, Washateria are all on top of the waste site. And at Northeast Cape, our families are now displaced. In the beginning of this community-based project, we've been funded from the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. After Pam met Annie, she sought funding, and we've been funded by NIH under National Institutes of Health. The burden of proof was put on my people. The military, when they buried everything in Gamble and abandoned Northeast Cape, have never properly characterized the contamination they buried in Gamble and abandoned at Northeast Cape. The burden of proof was put on our people, just like Annie. Her keen observation and knowledge of the changes in her people's health. In the 1950s, we did literature, ACAT did extensive literature review, and we only had one case of cancer. But we now know that the military toxics that was buried and abandoned from the Cold War era on Sivuqaq, which is our traditional name for St. Lawrence Island, we have been able to identify PCBs, pesticides, heavy metals, solvents. There was also massive fuel spills, mercury, asbestos, lead. And in the beginning of this project, our people wanted to get our blood tested first to validate what we'd known all along, that the changes in our health that Annie witnessed, we attributed them to the military toxics. And we tested the blood out of 3 groups: Gamble residents, Savoonga residents, and Savoonga residents closely associated with Northeast Cape. And as you can see, the bar in the middle has up to 10 times more PCBs levels in the blood of our people than the average American in the lower 48, which is the red line you see on the bottom. Gamble has about 6 times more PCBs, and our Savoonga families have about 7 times PCBs in the blood of our people. And we have shown evidence of PCBs that build up in the Arctic through air and ocean currents. The significant source we attribute to the military toxics on our island. These are health disparities witnessed by our people on the island. These diseases were never or rarely seen before in our people, including cancers. I mentioned the cancer crisis we have now. It's not a matter of if we'll get cancer, but when, including thyroid disease, diabetes, heart disease, the low birth weight babies, miscarriages, stillbirths, premature births that alarmed Annie, other reproductive health problems, learning and developmental disabilities in our children. Alaska has 2 times more birth defects than the lower 48. Our Alaska Native infants have even 2 times more than non-natives in our state of Alaska. And this elder you see is Eugene Tooley. As Winnie Jameson Gamble, he was very instrumental in sharing his wisdom and knowledge. He worked for the Air Force for 25 years. And the image on the middle is all the barrels and barrels and barrels that were abandoned. And on the bottom right is our youth that are setting traps in the Sivuqaq River. We hire and train local people. Our tribes are our partners. This is one of the few in the nation and globe where we do our own research. As I mentioned, the burden of proof was put on our people, and we now feel that the military has turned their back on us. Our leadership helped design the research, what data to collect. And this is ownership. This gives them ownership so we can make our own informed decisions. And we have 2 community health researchers in each of our communities. We have elders and youth, current and past, leadership, parents, grandparents who give us advice and guidance. We have a Protecting Future Generations work group. We are one of the few in the Arctic who have done our own research. As I mentioned, we now know that the Arctic has become a hemispheric sink for persistent organic pollutants. These contaminants arrive in the Arctic and South Pole through air and ocean currents and get trapped in the cold North and South Pole and have nowhere else to go. An example is a farm worker in South America applies a pesticide on his crop, and within 5 to 7 days, it ends up here and get trapped here. They ended up in our permafrost, our glaciers, and ocean and ice. It's like a grasshopper effect. We now know we are some of the most highly contaminated population on the planet due to our reliance on our nakapik, our traditional foods that have sustained our people for millennia. These are burdens we didn't create. So it's so important that our leadership feel that it is so important that we continue to monitor the abandoned military toxics, the buried military toxics, but also the contaminants in the north. As I mentioned, we're a hemispheric sink, including pesticides and other industrial chemicals. They end up in our food web. They build up as they go up the food chain. And they are, as I mentioned, we have now known we are some of the most highly contaminated population on the planet due to our reliance on our nakapik. The Creator gave us everything we needed in what some people call some of the harshest locations on the planet. Everything that we need, our people thrived for millennia pre-Western contact. And now we're seeing health disparities. We're seeing disasters and crises. Burdens we didn't create. And with the warming of the planet, we now know the Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. And as the ice melts, the permafrost melt, as the glaciers melt, that's another route of exposure to our people. These POPs, persistent organic pollutants that have been sequestered or trapped, that are now even melting even faster is another route of exposure. So we have military toxics, POPs that arrive in the Arctic, and also now that are being released due to the melting of the ice, permafrost, and glaciers. In the beginning of our project, when our leadership learned the high rates of PCBs in the blood of our people, at their direction, we sought funding. They wanted us to look at our nakabik. We collected over 300 samples of everything we eat. And we now know that the marine mammals, our main foods during our long winters, are so loaded with PCBs at levels we should not be eating them for excess cancer risk. Our traditional food is killing our people. And this is so unethical. This is so, how can this happen to us when we have only taken what we need from our lands and waters with the utmost respect and in harmony with our lands and waters? I do want to stress one fact, the most important factor I have learned doing this for 20 years. Our people still feel the benefits outweigh the risk. It's our identity, it's our culture, it's our traditions. Our songs and dances are, we're all tied to our way of life and our foods. Our people still feel the benefits outweigh the risk of our nakabik. And as you can see, the marine mammals from non-detect, and that's what ND means in the walrus, we learned that the meat is much lower in these toxic chemicals, but they build up in the, these PCBs are fat soluble, meaning they build up in the blubber and also in the fat in our people. As you can see, up to 100, almost 103 parts per billion in the bullhead whale, which was alarming because the bullhead whale is low on the food chain. They only eat plankton. However, they live a long life and migrate. So this is in the meat, the results of the meat, the fat and blubber, as you can see. The top of the food chain, which is the polar bear, is almost 583 parts per billion. This is outrageous. And the land mammals fare better, as you can see, the reindeer. And the organs, we eat everything. All the organs, including reindeer liver and kidney, were non-detect, up to 161 in the bearded seal skin. The plants and berries are much lower at 3.5 in the salmon berries. That are some of the most super packed berries on the planet due to our short summers and long daylight. Our plants, medicinal plants, berries are some of the most super packed on the planet. And some of the crab and ubas or sea cucumbers and peaches fare a lot better. The only guideline we can compare is for unlimited fish consumption that EPA has for PCBs. Non-cancer risk for diseases other than cancer, no more than 1 meal a month at 100 parts per billion. As you recall from the previous slide, up to 583 parts per billion. And then no more than 1 meal every other month. But this is our identity, our food. You know, our people in Gamble harvest normally about 300 walrus during the spring. And this is our main foods. As you can see, for cancer risk at 100, 300, do not eat. However, like I mentioned, our people use this. We do not tell them what to eat or what not to eat. Our people are smart. You know, the blubber and rendered oil, and which are important foods for our people, are all highly omega-3 fatty acids, brain food. The way of life we live, our indigenous people knowledge, is all science-based, which is on par or even greater than Western science. How to predict the weather, the migration patterns of the wildlife we have depended on for centuries. Our people used to be able to predict the weather, looking at the cloud formations, looking at our lands and waters, to be able to predict the weather 1 month away. That's all science-based, which is on par or even greater. And Western science is finally starting to acknowledge our Indigenous people's knowledge. I'm almost done here. With this community-based project, we have, as I mentioned, we have gathered our Indigenous people's knowledge, our elder knowledge, community leadership, who have been the foundation of our CBPR. We partner with some of the best academic partners. It's important that they recognize that we are partners. We are just not research subjects, that we are equal. We partner with Dr. David Carpenter, who's world-renowned on PCBs in health, and other academic partners. We train, as I mentioned, community health researchers. This project has an emphasis on community right to know, capacity building, and empowerment. And it's a right to know issue. And training for healthcare providers. Recently, we offered training and developed a toolkit for community health aides that we offered at their annual training, how to properly diagnose and treat environmental health effects. It's so important that they take all of us to address the health harms we're seeing, never seen before in our people. Also to strengthen chemical and environmental laws at the state, national, and international level that are not protective of communities like ours. These are images of our week-long college-credited course. We've offered 4 in Nome, 1 in Sivuqaq, and 1 here in Anchorage. It's open to anybody that's interested to learn and empower yourself on environmental health research. Also, we organize our youth, women, and elders to achieve human rights, and we offer training. We have Indigenous women and girls training. Norton Sound Health Corporation has been very supportive. We've had these in Nome, and 1 in Bethel. We had human rights training for our youth. Our basic human rights are being violated. Our human right to food and subsistence, our human right to health. And these are images. On the top is we had women who gathered in Chicaloon outside of Anchorage. We had women from throughout the globe who testified before the United Nations Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. We bring Arctic Indigenous Peoples delegation to the Stockholm Convention, an international treaty ratified by 182 countries. Our CBPR is instrumental in helping to ban toxic chemicals globally. This is an image of a young woman from Gambo testifying before 1,700 delegates from 182 countries and other NGOs. It's so important that we are involved. We are experts of our lands and waters and changes in our environment, in our health. The US is not even a party. It's on what I've come to learn of the government, EPA, State Department. We've exhausted all efforts within these state and federal agents to hold polluters accountable, including the military, who is one of the largest polluters on the planet. And the Stockholm Conventions recognizes the special vulnerability of Arctic Indigenous people. And this is in the preamble. that the conscious of the need for global action to protect human health and our environment, but important, acknowledging that the Arctic ecosystems and indigenous communities are particularly at risk. The health harms impact mostly women, children. Through them, our future generations. How can we pass on our songs and dances, our creation stories, our traditions and cultures? Because these toxic chemicals are endocrine disrupting chemicals that can affect our children's ability to learn. Our current project of protecting future generations is to do research in our children. We sought funding when we heard of concerns of our children's ability to learn from our parents and grandparents. The chemicals present in our bodies are passed into our children and harm their ability to learn our languages, songs, stories, and our indigenous people knowledge. This is me testifying in front of this at the Stockholm Convention, the only legally binding treaty. I've been to Geneva, Switzerland 5 times. It's very difficult to leave my family for 2 weeks at a time. However, we do this to protect our future generations. And we acknowledge Annie in her words. We don't want any of you to fight with each other, but work together to clean it up for our sake. Sivuqaq Yupik People. Thank you. I think I went over. However, I hope that this moved you to take action. It's going to take all of us. And most people have no idea that there's over 130 chemicals made and produced. We're being exposed in our homes, workplaces. And some of us, through our traditional foods or military toxics, abandoned. So Sivuqaq Yupik People, it's an honor to share this results and history of our Protecting Future Generations project.
Thank you, Vi, so much for being here today. Your messages represent a holistic connection to nature and the creator, and you demonstrate the strength between generations that enables you to advocate. We have a couple of questions. The first one, how many military sites were established on Sivuqaq in the past? And do you know if the military has plans to establish more now with the increased traffic in the Bering Strait region related to the port expansion and to the opening of the Northern Passage?
Yes, the 2 formerly used defense site, they went to gamble first in the late 1940s, and Northeast Cape was established in the early 1950s. And they didn't close until early to mid 70s. These sites have never been properly characterized, and there's ongoing sources of military toxics. Northeast Cape, the Savoonga River I mentioned where the youth were setting traps, used to have some of the most salmon abundant on our island. The fish have never returned. There is landfills in place. And our tribe was never a party to the record of decision. Both Gamble and Northeast Cape, formerly used defense sites, have been prematurely closed. So, recently, this past summer and fall, the military came back to do some training due to the existing war, yet again, another war. And they did training and recently just recruited our people for the Alaska Defense Force. Once again, our people are still patriotic and want to continue. However, they turned their back on us. As I mentioned, it's not a matter of if we'll get cancer. My dad died of cancer. The hospital in Nome kept sending him home. He had to pay for his own way to Anchorage. By the time we found out he has cancer, it was too late. My mother had a stillborn child, heart disease, strokes, diabetes, and cancer. We buried my brother 7 months ago. He got cancer, and shortly after I did too. I'm a cancer survivor. I've had 3 miscarriages. We attribute all of these health harms to my immediate family. We were a family of 8, my parents and siblings, and half of us have gotten cancer. I have 2 brothers, my first cousins, that are families from Northeast Cape, fighting cancer. My heart goes out to Ukraine. However, the military is the largest polluter on the planet. I've come to learn this being on the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council. We hear people. I want to share that if you ever get an opportunity and want to share about issues that may be happening in your communities, there will be a public meeting coming up in June, and I can share information with Northwest Campus, how people can testify before us. And we are a voice. I'm the only Alaskan Arctic voice at the WEJAC. As Barb mentioned, I was appointed just recently for my 2nd term. We hear from people from throughout the nation and the globe about issues they may be facing, whether it's military toxics, whether it's polluters from development, or PFAS contamination in their drinking water, communities adjacent to industries. So it's important that share your information, share your voice. It's going to take all of us to make meaningful change to protect our children and future generations.
Thank you, Vi. And there are very many people who give you this message. Thank you for turning the pain and grief of your family and communities toward passionate advocacy. We have a couple more questions. The pollution levels seem totally at odds with the perception of Alaska being mostly, quote, untouched wilderness, unquote. Do you find that this perception makes it more challenging to gain the support from folks in power who can help work with communities and make positive changes in environmental policy and protections?
Yes, I totally agree with that, because we're a fossil fuel industry dependent state. Also tourism. Most people Alaska think Alaska's the last frontier in pristine. However, we've become a hemispheric sink for toxic chemicals, burdens we didn't create. The opening of the Northwest Passage, you know, the pollution that will come from shipping lanes and more tourists that affect the migration of the bullhead whale, our main food, the walrus we harvest. You know, the recent, I learned that the winged seals, the main food for polar bears, have drastically declined. And we heard about the horrible mauling recently in our region. And it's so important that we help. People are waiting for help to come. It's going to take all of us. And the state of Alaska had a big controversy about the PCB levels in the blood of my people, that they were not any higher or of any concern. And a researcher up north also had a controversy about the PCB levels in our bullhead whale. They had done similar research 10 years before. Our traditional food study is what our leadership wanted us to do when we learned about the high PCB levels in the blood of our people. They had a big controversy because they found the same levels in the bullhead whale 10 years before, but never reported back. The state of Alaska is so afraid we're going to quit eating our nakapik. We can make our own decisions, you know, and that our women are going to quit breastfeeding. We have done nothing but protect our lands and waters, and now are some of the most highly contaminated people on the planet. It's so important that our voices are heard. It's alarming to learn that the grandson I'm raising has a higher body burden of flame retardants than adults, because they're on the floor, put everything in their mouth. Flame retardants are in our carpet padding, furniture foam, hard casings of electronics. There's over 130,000 chemicals, and only a handful are ever tested for their safety before they're put on the market. They're driven by greed and profit and do not take our human health into account. This is why I do this. It's very personal, it's very difficult. However, I cannot see myself doing anything else. I may be one voice, however, I know I have to be at my optimal best to be a voice. I know
Thank you.
I know you can't tell I'm passionate.
Thank you, Vi. We greatly appreciate, and we're so grateful. Another participant mentions the blueberry and cranberry research at the University of Alaska Fairbanks with Mario Muscarella. And then we have a question from Sivuqaq. Thank you so much for the most important presentation for our people. Do you know how safe our water is? Any risky chemicals in our drinking water on Sivuqaq, like mountain water in Gamble?
You know, the two environments are so different, and I'd like to thank the resident of Gamble. We are highly concerned. The drinking water is very vulnerable in Gamble. You know, when they first went to Gamble, they established a base at the top of Sivuqaq Mountain, and there was a big explosion up there, so they moved it to the base of the mountain. So we have told the Army Corps of Engineers at every meeting, at every report, every document, that the drinking water is very vulnerable. However, Gamble is all cobble, right? Those of you that have been to Gamble, it's cobble. And at Northeast Cape in Savoonga on the other end is tundra. We have been able to find military toxics that I mentioned, PCBs, pesticides, heavy metal solvents, the massive fuel spill at Northeast Cape. So we know that the same contaminants are at Gamble. They are on top of the permafrost, they migrate, and there's an 8 to 12-inch sludge, because they punctured holes in 300,000 barrels on top of Gamble. And it's there, it's difficult to find it, but we know. And we continue to monitor Troutman Lake. And we've found PCBs there and perfluorinated compounds. And we report back the findings to Gamble leadership and Savoonga leadership. And so it's important we all become aware of what's happening in our communities and get involved. And please contact us. We were just recently in Gamble and Savoonga for our Protecting Future Generations project. Please look on our website. We're working on legislation to get PFAS out of firefighting foam. There's over 30 communities with PFAS contamination. It's a forever chemical. And you can also find it in fuel. We have a lot of little airplanes in the state. The only way to get to our communities is by boat and plane. It's used in fuel for these little airplanes. So please get involved.
Thank you, Vi. Thank you for your longstanding and passionate dedication to the safety and well-being of the people, not only the people of Sivuqaq, but the people of Alaska, the people of the world. And to the viewers, thank you for joining us today. Keep an eye out for upcoming Shine a Light presentations at nwc.uaf.edu or Facebook at facebook.com/uaf.edu. NWC. If you'd like to share the recording or give feedback, you can do so by visiting the Community and in Events tab at nwc.uaf.edu. And we'll now close the webinar. Thank you so much, Vi.
Yukamsi kayo, Vikamsi. Thank you.